What's up, everybody, and welcome back. Matt here. As you know, I have been hanging out on a podcast called MetalcoreNerds with my friend Sean, talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi, Miss Marvel, The Boys, all the good stuff. So, for the finale of Obi-Wan Kenobi, we sat down with a very special guest, Nick from the band Bayside and the podcast Thank the Maker, to talk about the finale of Kenobi. And that is what this episode is. Go ahead, give it a listen. Make sure you follow all their socials. Make sure to check it out and let us know what you think. Cheers.
What's up, everyone, and welcome back to Metalcore Nerds. We're here to talk about Obi-Wan Kenobi finale. I have my co-host here, Matt from Hops Geek News, joining me back again, but we have a very special guest. We have Nick Ghanbarian from the band Bayside, and maybe more importantly, the Thank the Maker podcast. Thank you so much for taking your time to talk about Obi-Wan with us. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I was just saying before we started recording, I've been home less than 24 hours from our tour, so I'm feeling nuts, but I'm feeling super prepared to talk about Star Wars because I've watched the show 3 times, maybe 4. I lose count already, and already did our own podcast on Thank the Maker about it, so I'm ready. It's the only part of my brain that's working is the Star Wars part.
That's all that
matters right now.
Yeah.
That's all that matters right now. So before we actually get into talking to Obi-Wan, there's another Star Wars it's a rumor, so take this with a grain of salt. It's not confirmed, but actually Christian Harloff went on his YouTube channel and talked about how there is a Cal Kestis Disney Plus series rumored that he has signed on to do it. There's no production details or anything like that, but Christian Harloff has a very big YouTube channel. He also has a Star Wars podcast called Sith Council. If you have not checked that out, he's very good at what he does, and he's very connected. He's worked in the industry. He still does, technically. That's his job, is to talk about these things, including Star Wars. So Nick, I want to hear from you first. Are you stoked about this? Have you played the game? Have you played Fallen Order? What do you think about Cameron Monaghan making his way into the live-action Star Wars universe?
I mean, I hope it happens. It seems like in the era that most of these series take place, it makes sense that he is around, so why not? But I didn't really play the game too much. At the beginning of the pandemic, like I haven't owned a gaming system since like PlayStation 2, and even then I'm also a big hockey fan, so I would just play NHL by myself. Like this was like pre-online gaming, so I would just create a character, put myself on the Rangers, and then have a whole career. But yeah. I'm from New York, so that's my team. But one regret I have in my life is not. I remember making the decision to stop playing video games because I thought it was a waste of time. Big regret, because it's not a waste of time. It's like a multi-billion-dollar industry now. So at the beginning of the pandemic, my buddy gave me a PlayStation 4. I guess he had 2 of them or something like that. Immediately I downloaded NHL and just caught myself up on how to play. But then Fallen Order was like $30 or something, download only. And I was like, that's a good deal. And I hear it's great. I played it for maybe an hour and realized that I was like super tense and haven't taken a breath in like an hour because I was like, this is canon. This is not a game. This isn't like Mortal Kombat, but Star Wars. It's a canon. I'm playing a movie, and I got like really tense and like just got way too into it to the point where it like wasn't fun. And I honestly never revisited it. I was just like, I took that way too seriously. And then over the course of the next couple of months, even though the pandemic was still raging, like I just got a little bit busier with like Chris and I, the drummer of our band, also have a coffee roasting business, so that got a little busier, and I just felt like I had a little less time to kind of just do whatever video game wise. So I don't know. There is like just a little bit of a like, I'm being a baby about it. I was like too scared to play it because it was just like, this is canon. I can't screw up. And I just took it too seriously. Restart.
Yeah, also, to be fair, though, I play NHL as well, and it's like the only time that my team's actually going to be successful right now. So, like, you can kind of put yourself in there and just shut your brain off and play.
Yeah, exactly. It's fun. That's like honestly the ultimate fantasy is to see your name and you make your character score a goal. Yeah. You know, like that's just as much fantasy as Star Wars is. It's me being on the Rangers and scoring a goal.
100%. And like you said, game massive, huge industry. one of the biggest industries there is out right now. Honestly, it makes so much money. It's crazy. And the game itself sold 10 million units. So it's like people have played this game, but there's also a big section of the people who don't really know anything about it. And I think if they brought them into live action, it'll give people the opportunity to learn more about Cal Kestis and everything like that, which I think would be very, very cool for people to see. My only question is, what time period would it be in? Because they're kind of already exploring the time period that we saw Obi-Wan in. The game, I think, is taking place at almost the exact time Obi-Wan is taking place in, and the other one was 5 years prior. So it's already kind of exploring those gaps. So I'm wondering if they might bring him into like the Mandoverse timeline, like post Return of the Jedi, and he kind of comes into play with all of that. Again, it's Matt and I have talked about this before, but it kind of leads into this bigger problem that I'm sure they'll explain. They're very good at this, but there's so many characters that have been introduced between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy that obviously were nowhere to be found within the sequel trilogy. So it's, I mean, they did a good job with Ahsoka not being involved in the prequels and everything like that. So I'm sure there will be a good walk around of how to, because you only see it from a certain point of view in these events. You don't see everything that's going on at once. We did see the Ghost in The Rise of Skywalker. So technically Hera was probably there, and maybe some of the other rebels. We don't know. We might find out. Who knows? But it's a big question of when this will take place. But I'm stoked to see if it happens. I'm stoked.
I saw somebody on Twitter today that was like, maybe it's a hot take, which now bear with me. What if they remade the original trilogy? And I know it's very sacrilegious to talk about doing that, but they could, I eventually, maybe somebody's going to do it, and they maybe bring in these characters that have been introduced, and then they build kind of a different story where it's not a shot for shot remake of A New Hope, Empire, and things like that. What do you guys kind of think about them exploring that possibility? Like I said, it's very sacrilegious, but
that's rough.
I mean,
I don't think they should remake it, but maybe add within it.
Right.
That I would be okay with if they added stuff in the same period.
If everyone was a level-headed Star Wars fan, I think everyone would be like, that sounds fun.
This isn't the most level-handed fandom we've ever seen.
Yeah, no, right? Because you saying that right now, I would be able to handle it because I could separate things, and I know that it's ultimately this is entertainment and it should be fun. You know, I have the like dichotomy within me that it's like my lifeblood. I've liked it before I even had memories. I've liked it since I was like 2 years old. But I also, so I take it very seriously, but I also know the full on other end that it's not my life and it's entertainment and it's supposed to be fun. So why would it bother me if I don't agree with something, you know? And that not a lot of people think that way. So like I could handle them remaking it all, especially with modern technology, adding characters, whatever. But like we wouldn't be able to handle that. Like as a fandom, we wouldn't be able to handle that.
I feel like that would completely obliterate the fandom.
Society would literally crumble.
That would be insanity. But I mean, if they did stuff within it, that could be cool. Like we said, we've only seen these events from a certain few perspectives, really. We haven't seen all the other things. I mean, like even Rogue One, which didn't take place during the original trilogy, it led right up to it. That was a completely different point of view than we've ever seen anything from Star Wars. So, and it seems like we're getting more of that with Andor, and we got that with Rebels, and you know, we've gotten all these stories from all these different subsects of the galaxy. Like the galaxy is massive, and we've only seen a certain part of it. So, I
think they're doing a good job with introducing everyone in a way that like really makes us happy that Ahsoka and Bo-Katan are around, but then also, and my example is always, and I feel like I say it 10 times a day when I'm talking about Star Wars, it's like they also have to make my mother be able to understand this, you know? My mother doesn't know who Bo-Katan is or Ahsoka, so the first time that she sees those characters, she has to understand where they're coming from. So there has to be a certain amount of like exposition there, because we're all doing cartwheels because we're like, Bo-Katan's here, oh my god, and my mother's like, who's this, why should I care, you know? So they have to constantly walk that line, and I think that they're doing as good of a job as they can with that stuff.
100% agreed there. So before we get into the whole deep dive of the finale, I wanted to know what your anticipation level was like, because a lot of people were, obviously this was super highly anticipated. It was the biggest debut of any Disney Plus series across the board, including Marvel as well. So obviously people were clamoring to watch this. It's a very well-loved character. It's a very well-known character, which we haven't really gotten with Star Wars so far. You know, we got Mando, and I guess Boba Fett to a T, but we didn't know him in the same level as Obi-Wan, obviously. So what was your anticipation going into the series?
It was high, and that's kind of different for me, because I realized after The Force Awakens that expectations were ruining things for me. You know, like speculating on what I think should happen or what I want to happen, and it all got like thrown out for The Last Jedi, which is, I love the movie, like I'm fine with it, but I realized that my kind of anxiousness around what happened in The Last Jedi the first time I saw it fully had to do with me and not the movie, like what I thought should happen. So I realized then that expectations are like a Star Wars fan's like biggest, you know, that's the dark side. Expectations are dark side. But for the first time during Disney Plus, like this is the first time that I had expectations, because it was a character we're familiar with, and obviously them casting Hayden Christensen, I was like, this has to be emotional. Like when you have Ewan and Hayden, Obi-Wan and Anakin, like at this point there's so much. If you're a Star Wars fan who watched all the movies, animation, even read some novels, comics, whatever, to any extent, there is so much there's an emotional relationship between those two characters, more so than any two characters in Star Wars. So I went into it wanting to cry every single episode. That's what I wanted out of 6 episodes, was just
me too,
an emotional wreck, because I know how heavy it is when you really just think about all of Star Wars, of like Anakin is the beginning of this story. He had 2 kids, Obi-Wan and Anakin, like brothers, everything that went down between them. Then Obi-Wan has to hide Luke, or like look after Luke. Now we see that he looked after Leia for a little bit. Then Leia has Kylo. Like all of this stuff is like so heavy, and I want to feel that emotional side of it more than it usually is presented to us. But that was my expectation overall, is that I really wanted to have, and we got it a little bit in the finale, so I'm happy, but I wanted to see Obi-Wan talking to Vader as if he was Anakin, you know, like that's what I wanted to rip my heart out, and we got it at the end, which was good.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think a lot of us we really wanted that too, the emotional weight, and it definitely got me a few times, especially with Ewan McGregor's performance. I was talking about this with a few friends earlier today, is that acting in Star Wars has never been as high class as what Ewan brought to this series in particular. It is unbelievable what he did. It's incredible, and just the pain you saw in his face almost the entire series was that enough was like, damn, you are fucked, man. Like you are so broken and defeated, and it makes sense though. The dude lost everything, completely everything.
There's so many people in Star Wars that we love have lost everything or never gotten what they wanted, including Anakin Skywalker. I was having that conversation last night where I was like, I think he had about like 2 minutes with Luke at the end of Return of the Jedi. That's the only thing he's ever gotten in his life that he wanted. Is he never met Leia. His wife died. He got 2 minutes with his son at the end of Return of the Jedi. Like Anakin, like the person from the prequels, that little kid, that teenager, that dude just lost his whole life, and it's like that's sad, man. That's really sad.
And he just lived a life of pain and anger for decades. Yeah, and that's it. Well, that's all he experienced. And that's awful.
Yeah, it's a really awful thing. That's the tragedy.
Especially when you look at from The Phantom Menace, how excited he was as this 10-year-old boy to be like, "You're a Jedi? Nobody can kill a Jedi." And then his whole journey up to when he's laying there maskless, let me look upon you with my own eyes. And he's like, tell Leia, you know, and you're right. He never formally meets her as Anakin. It was always as Vader. And looking at all that, filling the gaps, man, it just, I'm like you. I wanted that emotional aspect. And we definitely kind of got it in this finale.
Yeah. So let's talk about a little bit about this final battle, because I saw a few people saying they're underwhelmed by it, which I honestly I don't really get. Was it the same theatrics as Revenge of the Sith? No, but the emotional beast, it was exactly what we were talking about. That's what hit. And one thing I loved about it too, which I'm sure we'll get into more callbacks because there's about 20 million in this episode alone, is that this fight mirrored heavily the Ahsoka fight in Rebels when Vader faced off with Ahsoka, the mask breaking, him saying, "And then you will die," just everything. And those are the two people closest to him, so it makes perfect sense that they're the only two that weren't kind of living in fear by him entirely. Actually knew who was under the mask, and that's why they could kind of take it to them. Obviously, Ahsoka doesn't really defeat Vader like Obi-Wan does, but it makes more sense that Obi-Wan would be able to rather than Ahsoka. But man, this fight was awesome. Like even him lifting the rocks, going back to what Yoda taught Luke, and then what Luke taught Rey. Just I was like, the rocks. I tweeted about this, and I was like, there's so many they did the thing moments in this episode of you're like, oh my god. And I don't think it was too heavy handed. It was more of just like, wow, I can't believe they're including these little nuggets in between, because not a lot of people have seen the animated shows. Like a lot of people have, like us, but there's tons of people who haven't seen it, even people who are deeply obsessed with Star Wars. And I've been sending the clip of the Ahsoka Vader fight to so many people. I was like, have you watched Rebels? And they're like, no. And I'm like, watch this. You don't need any context. Just watch it. And you'll be like, whoa, crazy. But so what was your thoughts on the, you talked about how you got some of that emotion that you wanted in this confrontation, but were you underwhelmed by it, or did it deliver for you? This epic rematch?
Yeah, no, I mean, it delivered for me because I didn't think that they were going to try to outdo the best lightsaber duel ever, you know? Like, I don't think that was ever the plan. And they're two different people at this point, and not for nothing, Vader is more powerful now than he is finesse, you know? So the Revenge of the Sith duel was finesse. That was two, basically, even though that was Vader at the end of Revenge of the Sith, that was two Jedi, prime. You know? So Vader at this point is power. And you could even see that Obi-Wan had to change his style to be power. So it was power versus power. The finesse even still was pretty brute. Like, it was throwing rocks, it was breaking ground, you know, like it was still like just overall power versus power. And that was it was really well done. And, you know, there were a couple of moments in the entire series, but the two times where I was like, in a good way, what am I watching right now? Is that I said that out loud when I'm watching it by myself, was when Vader was burning Obi-Wan in episode 3, and then when he buried him alive in episode 6, and I'm like, what am I watching? This is insane. You know, like these are things that you just never thought. It never even crossed your mind, like, oh, it would be cool to see this. It would be cool to see that. People didn't even think of these things, and they happened. And it was absolutely brutal and beautiful. And you see the ruthlessness of Vader, which I'm so happy that, like, the overall production of Disney, you could see where they make choices to make things a little less brutal, which I understand. They showed Vader be brutal in this, which is really, you know, like he looked like more of a villain than ever. He's touted as the greatest villain of all time, and this might be the first time we actually saw it.
Oh yeah.
Like, he looked like a bad guy. That was a bad guy for sure.
Oh, 100% a bad guy. I even said something similar. I was like, I know he has always been talked about as the baddest villain, but I was like, Vader has never been cooler and more cruel and more terrifying than he has in this series. It is insane. And a lot of people were like, oh, what about Rogue One? And I was like, he was brutal and wild in that. But I was like, he was terrifying, especially in episode 3 when he was going through that town, snapping kids' necks and stuff. I was like, whoa. I was like, what is going on? Yeah. But Matt, I know you did say this is probably one of your favorite Star Wars lightsaber duels. So elaborate on that a little bit. I want to hear what you have to say. Yeah.
So like Nick was saying, probably the greatest duel of all time was, you know, Revenge of the Sith, right? You get two guys who know each other's style so well, they mirror it so well, and it's just finesse. What they do here, it just felt brutal, like we mentioned, and raw. It felt like a street fight. Like, they were just hammering at each other and hammering away, and you felt when the lightsabers hit, it felt heavy versus that light, you know, everyone's just jumping around prequel style. And I loved that because this mirrored Vader's fighting style, kind of like we see in the original trilogy, how it's more, he's just power. He's a robot. He's lost a lot of the force. He can't move like he used to. And so now it's more of him just heavy swinging because he wants to beat you with that brute power. And Kenobi at this point, he's just mad. Like all of the pent up aggression, the anger, the sadness, everything over the last 10 years of his life has built up to this moment. And he's finally kind of letting it go. And you see that at the scene where he's throwing the rocks at Vader, just pelting him. And the look on Ewan's face was just, he looked pissed. And it was kind of like, for somebody like Obi-Wan, who doesn't necessarily show that anger because he's the model Jedi, it was like, wow, this is just two guys who had a massive falling out because they were brothers. Obi-Wan has lost so much, and it's all coming to the surface now and just beating each other. And I feel like it took that moment where he breaks the helmet. He almost loses himself until he breaks that helmet, and then he sees Anakin. And just like with Ahsoka, their first words are Anakin, because he kind of snaps back to it. And to me, just the beauty of it all, the colors, like you were saying, we never thought we'd see Vader just burying Obi-Wan Kenobi alive. Like, it doesn't get much more brutal than that. And I've been asking for this exact thing for 17 years now. Like, why is Vader the best villain of all time? Show me. We got it. And that's why it's up there for me.
Yeah, it was great. Even when he got the mask broken and you saw the colors of the blue, and then finally when he's like, I killed Anakin, it wasn't you, it was me, and the red flashed over his face, and the mixture of Hayden Christensen's and James Earl Jones' voice on top of each other, and you see his eyes turn yellow again, just like we saw in Revenge of the Sith, which was so beautifully done. Someone actually missed it because they commented on a post I made about, oh, we didn't see his eyes turn yellow. I was like, did you miss it? I was like, it happened when he said, I'm the one who killed Anakin, not you. And then Ewan finally gets that. He's like, he's gone. My closure's here. It wasn't my fault. I'm out of here. See ya. And goodbye, Darth. Which I was talking to my friend. It is kind of silly. I know it is a callback to A New Hope, but calling him by his like surname is kind of strange. But I get why they did it, because it was obviously connecting.
Well, he's a Sith now, so that's just him also being like, you're nothing. You don't have a title. You're just a nothing to me now. So you're just Darth. You're not Vader. You're not Anakin. You're just Darth.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. I'll try to not repeat myself, about if anyone thinks or anyone listens to thank the maker out there. But, I think that there were a couple of moments, I think I counted 3, just in that duel that really were quick little throwaways, like you said, like calling him Darth. Vader called Obi-Wan Master during that. Then there was also one other thing that I also forgot. I think just saying, you didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, I killed Anakin Skywalker. All 3 of those moments make A New Hope safe canonically. And they were just quick little things that really do matter. And the Darth, calling him Darth was a little bit like that didn't need to be in there, but in A New Hope, obviously, like, I always forget exactly what it says, but Vader's something like, last time we met, you were the master and I was the learner, like that type of thing. So in this duel, Vader calling him master still fixes that a little bit. And then also from a certain point of view, or was it the first time Luke is with Obi-Wan where he says like, Vader killed your father or whatever.
Yes.
Like that line of Anakin saying, you didn't kill Anakin, I killed him. That fixes that too. So there's just quick little things that it's like, I hate that they feel like they have to shoehorn some stuff in for a certain part of the fan base, but that's what that's for. I feel like, to keep the canon, like canonicity. I don't know if that's even a word.
We'll roll.
So yeah.
And even the part with Leia at the end kind of added to that too.
Totally,
because he's because a lot of people were like, why would she say Obi-Wan and why would she not say Ben, or be like, hey, why would she be so formal about it? And I was thinking, even when that Reva stuff happens, when she finds the transmitter of Obi-Wan, it's her learning from her father's mistakes of saying, like, he obviously gave the whole whole card away with that secret. But then Obi-Wan really nails it home with like, hey, we have to keep the secret. We can't let people know. It'll put us both in danger. And I was like, there you go. There's the thing everyone was like, this doesn't make any sense. So it's like, well, now it does make sense. Will it keep everyone happy? Definitely not. But they tried. And I did love the touch of if you ever need help from a tired old man, and
Yeah.
She does.
Yeah.
10 years from now, she does need help from a tired old man. and like you said, the ways it like just that enhances some of the things, or even fixes or makes things better from the original trilogy. Like her saying, "Oh, you're my only hope, Obi-Wan Kenobi," I feel like means so much more after this series.
That's where
and her naming her kid Ben.
Yeah. Like, crazy. Right? Made so much sense.
it's so wild, and it hits that much harder now. Yeah. It's amazing. It's like poetry. It rhymes.
That's exactly. But that's, I mean, again, this is more of an internet and a humanity problem than a Star Wars problem. But there are just people out there who don't want to learn, they don't want to be wrong, they don't want to admit when they're wrong, and people just want to be unhappy. So it's like, to me, it's like, I wish, obviously fight for yourself and what you want when it comes to like any sort of bigotry or anything like that. I'm not saying like don't stick up for yourself, but also not every negative comment from a Star Wars fan, quote unquote Star Wars fan, needs to be an argument. Like, stop arguing with people you don't know on the internet. They don't want their mind changed. It's not a civil conversation. Don't waste your time. And another thing is, there's bots out there. Like people just are arguing with bots. Don't argue, because a lot of the times you're not even arguing with a human being. So, like I said, I'm not saying ignore everything, because truly you do have to stick up for yourself when it comes to like bigotry and stuff like that. But like, don't try and change someone's mind who's just like so far off the path. Like I to quote Obi-Wan all the time, when I go on a tangent, I'm like, well, truly you are lost. Like, there are so many Star Wars fans out there that are just lost. They don't know what it takes to be happy, probably in life, let alone a Star Wars thing. Because the biggest issue with fandoms in general is that you have 40-year-old people trying to feel like they're 5 again, but they don't know that that's more on them than the entity. They have to put in a little bit of effort and maybe think about things a little differently, take things in differently than they did when they were 5 and it was just flashing pictures on a screen. It's like, it takes a little bit of effort. Same thing with music. It's like, no band's 8th record means as much as a band's 2nd record. It doesn't mean it's bad. It's like, that's one thing that we don't struggle with Bayside, but like we for sure are conscious of it. It's like, we're putting out the best music we ever have. We know that. Is it going to connect with people like it did 20 years ago when they were 15 and they heard our 2nd record? Definitely not. But it needs to be something that still can be connected with if people want to connect with it. It's not a relationship that is like very black and white. It's something that like fandoms need effort on both ends, really.
Well, you need to grow as well. I mean, you're not the same person, like you said, back when they were 15, and a lot of the Star Wars fans, something about Star Wars is for everybody, right? You have people who are 40 in the 70s and now they're older. You got to grow. You got to grow, and you can appreciate this new stuff. It's not going to be the same. It doesn't have to, because if everything was the same as it was 20 years ago, then what's the point of still doing this?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And the thing is too, and why like it's ultimately kind of funny to me, is that I know that a huge portion of the fan base gets it. But it's just like the internet. There's the like vocal minority that you're just like, why does everyone hate Star Wars? Whenever anyone says, why does everyone hate Star Wars? I'm like, they don't. Most people like it. Go to Celebration and there's like 30,000 people there having the time of their life. Galaxy's Edge. Nothing better than the Star Cruiser, which that's a whole other thing we could talk about. Me and the podcast guys went on the second ever journey of the Galactic Star Cruiser have never had more fun in our lives. Like, truly. And you had every age group from like, I saw 6-7-year-old kids having the time of their life, and then people who absolutely saw the original trilogy in theaters. Like, I saw 60-70-year-old people having the time of their life. Like, every age group of Star Wars fans, like, cosplaying and living in Star Wars for 2 days, and it was ultimately like the best experience I've had in my life. And it's like, it works for most people. It's just the internet's the internet.
It's easier to find that negativity than it is to
exactly.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that a lot of the pop culture news cycles, they like to post the negative stuff over the positive because it gets more clicks too. So
exactly,
it's a whole thing. I try to have. There's like a podcast group that I try to talk about this all the time, and I'm like, hey guys, I was like, they'll post like an article, and I'm like, don't read this. I was like, they're just trying to paint a narrative for you. And I was like, if you actually read the article, they kind of negate the whole headline. And and I was like, that's the most important thing. So I was like, I'm not trying to tell you guys to read, but you should probably read the article and see what's up in it before you paint a bigger picture, or maybe go somewhere else and get a different point of view or different facts, because people just love to spin stuff in ways they are. And that's like I've been having that conversation about pop culture in general. It's like people are just looking for things to hate. And I was like, I wish people, because the way I view this stuff, it's like I enjoy it. I enjoy to watch it. Do I like everything? No. Do I like most things? Yes, I do, because I'm sitting here to watch it. I'm not a critic. I'm a dude who talks on a podcast about it. Yes, because I love it, but I would never call myself a critic, because I'm usually not too critical about these things. And I watch it to enjoy it. And if you choose you want to pick everything apart, and I don't know, maybe you should try and work in that field and do something that you think you could do better. That's kind of what I always, they're like, man, this is the story, the script is terrible and the direction was awful. And I'm like, maybe you should go into this stuff. I was like, I'm not even being mean, but I was like, if you have an eye for this stuff, you might as well, it's
the visual effects argument we've had.
Listen, go, if you really want to watch perfect movies, stick to the like AFI top 100 movies of all time list. I'm sorry you're such a high end, film snob complaining about Star Wars.
It's crazy, but I love to hear that kind of perspective from other people.
Well, I think it's hard. I honestly, like I said, I think it's like a humanity issue and like a growing up issue where people just they're not in tune with themselves, and they don't know what it takes to be happy in a modern life with the internet. And another huge part of it is that like algorithms promote and not promote, but they support negativity, because like you said, it'll get clicks. There's no opposite. There's no like light side part of that where like you could put out some great news and it gets a bunch of clicks. Like there's no equal light and dark there. It's just all the bad stuff gets all the clicks, and that's ultimately a choice made by these algorithms, like by these social media companies. So to bring it back to Star Wars, the social media companies are Darth Sidious and all these other places, all these other headline clickbait people are Darth Vader just being manipulated into putting bad stuff into the world. Yeah.
100%. Speaking of Darth Sidious, we got him in the finale. I did not see him coming. That was a big surprise to me. I was like, oh shit! But that was a nice surprise, and it did give perfect explanation to why wouldn't Vader go after Obi-Wan Kenobi again. And I know some people might be pissed off about it, but who does Vader want more approval than Palpatine? No one. That dude worships that man. So if he's like, leave it, he's like, okay. You got it, guy. Like he needs, like that's his whole thing. He needs approval. He needs, praise. And he's like, Palpatine was right. He's like, you're not acting as Vader right now. He was acting as Anakin this whole series. His, obsession with Obi-Wan and getting revenge for really, if you really think about it, Anakin caused himself. He was tricked, of course. Yes. But like the whole events, it was of his own doing 100%. Totally. But it was nice seeing Palpatine. That was a pleasant surprise. It was cool, because even Ian McDermott was like, you're not going to see me, which I mean, if you hear any actor say they're not in something, it could go either way.
Well, Liam Neeson said the same thing, right? That he hadn't been contacted. It's like, okay.
Yeah. And we all knew we were going to see Liam Neeson at least once. Like we knew we had to see it. Like,
I mean, in the first episode, he's trying to reach him. I'm like, oh my God, we're going to get Qui-Gon. That's crazy.
But it was amazing to see Liam Neeson back in Star Wars, because we only got him really in episode 1 and some Clone Wars stuff and things like that. But it was really nice to see him. And someone made the joke that Disney Force Ghosts are so sassy, because he's like, took you long enough, bro. What's been going on? But it was nice to see him. It was nice to see him with that long hair, and it was good. I do want to talk about, do you guys think there should be a season 2? I'm kind of they tied it up with a really nice bow. Yeah. I guess they could do more stuff with him and Qui-Gon. I'm sure that would do very well. I feel like the series did a really good job of what it was, what I expected it to be honest. There were some things that I didn't get that I wanted, but I know it was me selfishly wanting them. So it didn't bother me. I can be of the mind of, this would be cool if we saw this, but if we don't see it, I'm not gonna be mad about it. Or if I theorize something happening in other things, if it doesn't happen, I'm like, whatever. It was just me thinking out loud. I don't make these things, but Do you think there's enough there for a season 2?
It depends. Like the Qui-Gon stuff, I don't think is like a whole 6 episode series of season 2.
Yeah.
But the one thing I've noticed is like this was 6 episodes of about a week in Obi-Wan's life, you know?
Right.
So if that's the pacing of the storytelling, then you still have like kind of 8 more years before A New Hope happens. So you could tell another story over the course of 6 episodes. That's another week in Obi-Wan's life. So I don't know what that should be or what it could be.
I have an idea.
Yeah, I don't know.
What's your idea, Matt?
Well, you saw they put a pretty heavy focus on how they're rescuing Jedi, right? And kind of hiding them. Well, then there's your story right there. If you want him to continue training with Qui-Gon and you want to show that, you could also have him contacted and maybe he helps a couple Jedi go to hiding, because in the beginning of this season, he leaves the one for dead. So maybe now he's like, all right, let me go ahead. And that could have him maybe clash with an Inquisitor or something if you really need to throw lightsaber battles in there. But like you said, you can easily pick a week out of his life and expand on something like that. And I'm sure there's always good stories to tell, and that could be one of them.
Yeah, I mean, if you said before that, they're going to do a series. I mean, I know it was rumored as like a movie for forever and things like that, of an Obi-Wan movie, but a lot of people could say like, this wasn't needed. But I feel like it's been a great bridge between episode 3 and episode 4. It's like someone said it's like, this is my new favorite trilogy is Revenge of the Sith, the Obi-Wan series, and then A New Hope, which I was like, man, looking at it like that way is pretty cool. But yeah, it's tough because we know this has been huge for Disney Plus. It's been, I don't know if final numbers have come out, and even numbers that are reported, if it's from Samba TV, they aren't correct because they only take on smart TVs. They don't take on like a lot of like Roku's and Google's. And if you watch it on your PlayStation or if you watch it on your phone or your tablet or your computer, it doesn't really account for that. So it's not exact numbers. So it's hard to super gauge. Another thing I hate about pop culture news is that they flaunt these numbers that aren't even 100% real. And a lot of people aren't very transparent about it, or just read it as face value, which is again another problem that just is in pop culture in general. But this is massive for this. But Matt and I have talked about it, and I think this would be the biggest thing for Disney Plus if they just did a Vader series in between like this and A New Hope, of Vader just like being Vader, just on a complete rampage. They could do more flashbacks with him and with Hayden and Obi-Wan from the past, whether if they do Clone Wars stuff in live action or just more stuff like what we saw in episode 5. But imagine a Vader series just announced. It would be the biggest thing Disney would ever imagine, because a lot of people things, if they have criticisms about Disney's version of Star Wars, a lot of people things will praise is how they've handled Vader. So why not do a whole 6 episode series of Vader just wrecking shit or something like that? Like, I feel like that'd be massive and huge. And like, you don't really need a huge story, but you can get some emotional weight with the Hayden stuff, him still being tortured and everything like that. But I feel like that would be the way to go. But you know, I'm sure if they do something, they'll do it at least in a way where I'll be like, that was solid. So
I would, if there was a path, I think this could be, think about how Ahsoka showed up in certain things, Bo-Katan shows up. Like, I feel like Obi-Wan could be a part of other series, you know?
Yes.
I don't necessarily need an Obi-Wan story or series, but he could be a player, like just have a story arc or whatever. I would love a Vader series, and that's notwithstanding from my Obi-Wan comment. But going back to the Cal stuff, and we haven't really talked about Reva that much, like she had a redemption arc. She's an Inquisitor, and I know that Fallen Order has a lot to do with Inquisitors and Cal. So like maybe like you were talking about the path, that's a great story for sure. And I thought that Roken was a great character. So awesome. I feel like there's some story there, whether it's a series or a storyline in another series, where the path seems like that should be a story that's told. That could for sure include Cal and Reva at this point, because if Reva wants to like help young Jedis because you know, of her past, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I don't know. I think there's ways to do it and ways to have Obi-Wan around that aren't necessarily just following him as a series. So, and I think that's kind of like this, how they're presenting Disney Plus series, in general, is that it's all one universe, and there's you're watching Boba Fett and boom, there's an episode of The Mandalorian in there, because
exactly.
That was so shocking, and I don't know. I see people complain about that too, and I'm just like, yeah, but it was like kind of the best episode of The Mandalorian. I can't complain about that. It was kind of it was amazing.
Those 2 episodes were some of the craziest things. Yeah, Star Wars. That was very much of your like, this is really happening. That was those whole 2 episodes. I was like, I cannot believe what I'm watching. I was like,
Luke Skywalker.
Yeah,
I was like, what is happening?
My face melted.
Yeah, absolute insanity. But I'm open for that because it also brings an element of surprise, and true. Like I don't know. I always say like speculating is fun, but like again, you should not let it become your expectations because we're not writing it. Like we're speculating based off of the things that are on the screen, let alone and just think that for years before that, people are writing this stuff. They're literally making it up. Like they could bring in a character that we don't know to alter everything. It's like we can't speculate. We can't speculate in a true sense because we don't have all the facts. So it's like, do it and with a grain of salt. It's fun, whatever, but don't make it your expectation. And when what you wrote in your head doesn't come true, you're mad. It's like that's fruitless for sure.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I did want to get to Reva and kind of close on Reva, and then we'll kind of give our a little bit of a final thoughts of the overall series. But Reva, I think the only, I guess this is kind of like a nitpick, is that the stuff in the finale felt kind of fast. Mostly the travel of it all. Like Obi-Wan got there real fast, which I guess there's hyperdrive, but even with hyperdrive, I was like, wow, he got there fast. Not like it mattered. It gave to that moment of Owen being like, he is mine, and showing that he could protect them without Obi-Wan and stuff like that, which I do think is very important.
was absolutely strapped.
Dude, she was ready to go. I was like, okay, all right. Shocking, but a welcome shock. But I thought Reva's backstory that we learned in episode 5 was completely compelling. We didn't get that face turn right away. It was more of she was pretty much Anakin. She was like the Anakin of the series in a way, but she turned to the other side because she couldn't kill the kid. And I do love how they hid from the fact Luke never saw a lightsaber, so that when he sees a lightsaber 10 years from now, he's like, a lightsaber, another thing they didn't have to do, but they had to, and they squeezed that in there. But she couldn't do what Anakin did to her, and I liked that part of it. Because at first I was like, I don't need Reva to be redeemed. And then by the end, I was like, that was a nice story. That was a really well thought out story. And everyone just being like, why is she so mad? And then you find out her story in episode 5 and you're like, oh, I get why she was so mad the whole time. And I knew there was more to it. Definitely, I knew there was more to it. I did not think it would be as almost badass as, you killed my friends. You tried to kill me. I am going to infiltrate you from the inside and kill you myself. Yeah. Which, ballsy,
refreshing,
definitely. Yeah.
And I knew she didn't stand a chance, but I will give her an A for effort on that.
You tried.
She tried. And
it's also just like badass of Vader to be like, I knew what you were doing. I was just letting you get like within an inch of what you thought was my life, which wasn't ever.
I was just bored.
Yeah.
And especially with the Grand Inquisitor coming back and just being like, hello. And I'm like, dude, like Vader played her so hard. And he's just like, I haven't had a lightsaber fight in a while. Let's just do this and I'll show off the whole time, which I thought was great. Yeah. And like Matt said, the Reva story was very refreshing, especially for Star Wars. It was a really, really cool story. And I love Inquisitor stuff. So, and on Roken, I kind of hope we see him in Andor, because it kind of just seemed like they're moving him more toward this like kind of Rebels thing. It would be so cool to see him in Andor. Again, if he doesn't show up, I'm not going to be mad, but that would be a perfect place for us to see him in. But I do hope we see him in more. O'Shea Jackson is an incredible actor. It was already known before this, and he seems so stoked to be in Star Wars. Totally. I'm just like, dude, please just
look at his Twitter feed. He was hyped.
He's so stoked, which is that's always awesome to see.
That.
And also, Chris Evans said he wanted to be in Star Wars. So whoever needs to do to make that happen, make that happen. What are you doing? Because he was promoting Lightyear, and they were like, "Oh, what would you want to be in?" And he's like, "I really want to be on Star Wars." I was like, "How is that not? Make that happen. Whatever you got to do, just make it happen." I'd be so down to see him do anything, especially if he's the bad guy, because he's in his like villain arc of playing like douchebags. So I would like to see him be a bad guy. That'd be cool. But someone did a fan cast. I can't remember his name, but the one guy who was like head in the Empire in Rebels, but then turned by the end. Spoilers.
Yeah, I forgot his name. Damn it,
I can't remember his name for the life.
He's got
of
the
me.
mutton chops.
Yes, he's got the mutton chops.
Oh, Callus.
Put some. Yes,
yes, Agent Callus.
And they put like a side-by-side picture, and I was like, that would be pretty cool if he shows up in Ahsoka and he's with the crew. He's with the crew. I don't know if he's going to be in that, but that would be a cool thing. But Chris Evans. But yeah, so let's wrap this up with final thoughts. And I like to do, when a series ends, rate it out of 5. So I'll let Matt go first. Just final thoughts on Obi-Wan as a series, and then what would you give it out of 5?
Yeah. So overall, I came into this like the only thing I want is I just want to see Vader or Obi-Wan find out that Anakin is Vader and is still alive. I got that. And I wanted to see them, fight again. And I got that. And the rest is just gravy. The rest is just, hey, this is awesome. As a fan, Star Wars is my favorite property. Like, this is no secret. I am very vocal about it. And I got what I wanted. I was so happy. There were moments I'm just sitting on the couch and my wife's looking at me like, seriously, like, you've never cried in like the 8 years of marriage, but you're over here like tearing up at this. I'm like, this is beautiful. Like, this is beautiful. And even with Reva and the Inquisitors, like, her story was great. A youngling who escaped became an Inquisitor. Like, there's a lot of stories there with them because they were all fallen Jedi at one, that's their stories. There were Jedi who were plucked, kind of worked for the Empire. That was awesome. It was just amazing. We are blessed as Star Wars fans, as nerds as a whole. Like, at one point we had the original trilogy, the prequels, and then Star Wars we thought was done. And now we're in this time where we're getting all these fleshed out stories of things that we wanted to see in between episodes 3 and 4, maybe between episodes 7 and 8 or 6 and 7, that kind of stuff. So we're getting it. And it's just, I've grown to appreciate it more. And it's amazing. So I know I grade things lower than you do typically, Sean. We always have this conversation. But I've come to appreciate it, getting to do this together and everything. Like you've shown, I've come to appreciate it more and appreciate these things. So it's a 9. It's a 9 out of 10 for me. A couple things missed here and there, but I loved this show so much. And I've already watched the finale 3 times as well in the last 24 hours. And I just sit there, and every time I watch that final battle, there's something else that sticks out to me, or just the whole thing. So I won't be upset if they don't do a season 2, but of course I'm going to be full hype train out of the station if we get a Vader series, if we get these other things. So it was a 9 out of 10 for me easily.
Awesome. How about you, Nick?
I'll go 9 out of 10 too, and it's only because I'm going a little dark side here with the expectations of I could have used a lot more in depth, in a nerdy way, conversation between Obi-Wan and Anakin. I think, not that there's I'll say missed opportunities, but there's all of the Clone Wars to pull from. And they could have really blown a lot of people's minds with either a flashback to that era or mention of that era or anything like that. And we did get a pre-Attack of a pre-Clone Wars throwback scene, which was, look at what that did to the fan base. It was just amazing. Everyone loved it. So I think that there could have been, whether or not Ahsoka or not was in a flashback, there's that. There's also bringing a lot of heaviness with Satine, like his relationship with Satine, which also brings in Mandalorian. I don't know. I was thinking more behind the scenes. I'm totally going on a tangent right now. I was thinking more behind the scenes of what stories they could tell with Obi-Wan, but that also had like a business sense to it of
Right.
like if they go into Satine and Mandalore, that ties a lot of things. That ties in Mandalore, which is going to be huge in the next like couple of years. But and I'm shocked they didn't bring Grogu in. I'm like, I feel like Grogu's going to have something somewhere. He's going to be in this series
from the temple.
Yeah, like totally.
As a kid.
yeah.
He was like, "You're coming with me."
Yeah. Who knows? I don't know. But I was like, wow, they didn't do what people kind of think that they do all the time with this, which is like shoehorn in or like backdoor pilot people shows, whatever. It's like, no, they really just stuck to their guns. And I think that a lot of that has to do with, I forget which writer had the Obi-Wan movie written, and I don't think that they had anything to do with the show necessarily, but they used a lot of the story from the movie. I think it's one of the writers. So I think I think that has a lot to do with what we saw and didn't see, is that a lot of this was written to be a movie and then reworked into a series. And I don't think that I can't remember their name, but the original writer of the movie wasn't involved in the series, but they used a lot of the story beats. So yeah, I'm happy they didn't shoehorn in Grogu or even Ahsoka to this point, because it all worked. Yeah. But I think it could have been heavier is the only thing. Like I think they got heavy for a minute, and I'm glad they did that, but it could have been heavier earlier, I think. That would be my one thing.
I would agree.
The Clone Wars thing was the thing that was one of my expectations going into it. But then I kind of talked myself out of it, being that, I mean, not that the flashback we got was more of trauma. It just kind of reflected what happened in the show, which they could have done with the Clone Wars as well. But I kind of talked it into, they're kind of focusing on more of the big battle and Revenge of the Sith and more of the traumatic things that led to where they are. So I was like, maybe they're not going to show the Clone Wars because it's not really traumatic. It's kind of like the best parts of their lives in ways, especially with their relationships, like really when they became brothers for the most part, is through that series. Yeah. So I was like, maybe that's not why. But like you said, if they showed a Clone Wars flashback, the internet would have blew up. Yeah. I would have lost my mind. I would have been like, they're doing
seeing
the
that armor. Like,
exactly.
Yeah. And I think they might be saving, I know it's like a rumor or a report that wasn't exactly confirmed, but that Hayden is going to be in Ahsoka. So maybe we get some of those Ahsoka beats.
I did see that. I think
he says he wants to come back.
Yeah.
He's very vocal about wanting to play more Vader and that he doesn't want to be done. And Ewan also said he doesn't want to be done. So,
right.
Yeah, I do remember that. I think I want to say it was Hayden's cast in Ahsoka.
Yeah, I think it was an actual report by like Deadline or Hollywood Reporter, which is obviously that's legit.
Do you remember they announced the cast of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and it was everyone was like, oh wow, all these people are in the show, and then it's like, because it was everyone we saw, but they all had like little bit roles. So casting, quote unquote, in Star Wars like doesn't really mean much. It's like, you cast O'Shea Jackson Jr. and Kumail Nanjiani, cool.
Yeah,
they had like probably not even a day's worth of work that they had to do for.
Right. Easily.
Yeah, and I do remember that thinking back. They had that big graphic with the whole cast, and you're like, oh wow, this is crazy. What is the story going to be? What is happening? And everyone's trying to figure out who's playing who. And
he said he was just getting started.
Exactly.
I mean, we can only hope, but I'm the same as you guys. I gave us a 9 out of 10. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was pretty much what I expected and more. I got more moments out of more, but I do agree it could have got heavier. Most of the heavy was Ewan. It was Ewan because he was the way he played, being so defeated, and that moment of him seeing Vader for the first time in episode 3 was so wild and so well done. The fact, I know some people complained about like, oh, why did he get his ass beat? And I'm like, the dude, like, what do you mean? Like, of course he got his ass beat. The dude is traumatized by what he's done. He thinks this is his fault. His brother is still alive, and he's this, like the biggest Sith Lord in the world besides Palpatine. Right. It's like, of course he's going to be like, what the fuck do I do? And again, he hasn't even tried to use the Force in a decade, but he got his groove back real fast once he had something.
Strength has returned.
Once he had something to fight for, once he, Leia and Luke, and that's an amazing catalyst to have. Again, just adds more to the original trilogy in my eyes. Like just the way that Obi-Wan was portrayed in this and the way he ended up, I thought was beautiful. I thought it was great. But 9 out of 10 for me too. I loved it.
Don't mess with people's kids, as Wanda and Kenobi have shown us.
It's true. Wanda showed us pretty hard. Don't mess with people's kids. But awesome. Nick, tell people, if they're not familiar with Thank the Maker, tell people about that and where they can find you with that.
Yeah, well, you could stream it anywhere. It's myself, Ryan, the singer of Yellow Card, and Adam, the bass player of Story of the Year. We're 100-something episodes in. We started like pre-pandemic, like early, like January 2020, I want to say. And it's been a lot of what you are hearing from me. Like, we love Star Wars, and we don't think it's perfect by any means, and we don't hide from that, but we love it. You know, like, we're a positive entity out there for the fandom because we love it, and we know it keeps us coming back, and we appreciate what we're getting, and everything that's, you know, still to come. I just really honestly feel like Lucasfilm and Disney are like finding their groove now, which is funny to say because Disney has owned Lucasfilm for a decade at this point. So it's like they're just finding their groove now, but the fandom clearly needs a lot more like just positive places out there to yeah. And it's weird you say therapy, because I honestly inadvertently think that a lot of the times, like, I'll go off on like these tangents of telling people how to enjoy things, which is not like my intention of like, this is what you should do, this is what you should do, but more like, here's how I process things. And and I'm only letting you know this because I don't get mad at things, you know, like I at the end of the day come back to Star Wars because I've loved it my entire life. I'm invested in this 40+ year story. It's getting heavier because of the work that Lucasfilm is putting in now, and it's more about you than it is Star Wars. If you're unhappy with it, it's not that Star Wars is bad, because it's not. It's it's because of how you're watching it, how you're viewing it, what your expectations, whatever. So there is a weird sense of therapy when it comes to our podcast here and there. But yeah, I mean, when there's not live action or animation on, you know, those episodes, we do just breakdowns and conversations like any other podcast. But then other than that, we have fun with Star Wars, which is the point we're all here. We want the community to have fun. We want, you know, just people to enjoy being a fan of something, which is the point of all of this, you know. So we'll just have, you know, fun episodes, either, you know, rating things or just talking about certain things. And a lot of times, like, our fandom has a lot to do with experiences, whether it's the conventions or going to Star Cruiser or stuff like that. So we cover, you know, we'll do episodes about that sort of thing too. So yeah, you could stream it anywhere. Hopefully by the end of the summer or so, we'll have some sort of YouTube presence. And nice. Really, really stoked on how it's going. And it's just the best thing you could hope for is what's happening is that we just have a good little community going. So yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly how I view things too. So hearing you say that is such a strange thing, because I was like, that's what I do. I go on tirades of like, we're made to enjoy these things, just enjoy them and stuff like that. And I do come off very preachy in that way too. So I appreciate your viewpoint of that, because I can relate wholeheartedly. Matt can attest to that 100%. But Thank the Make, there is an awesome podcast. I listened to it before you were actually joined on the podcast. And then when you did join, I'm selfishly, I am a big Bayside fan myself. Awesome. So I was like, I was like, the guy from Bayside's joining. I was like, wow, they already made it more stacked. It's kind of akin to this kind of podcast where it's like you take people from the music community and we talk about nerd stuff, but you know, it's like three very popular bands talking about Star Wars, and it's like, what more could you want than that? You know, and it is a very positive, nice environment there. It's like, you can have stuff with criticisms, but still be positive about it.
Yeah, that's the thing. We're not going to sit here and like, you know, the ultimate like thing a hater will call you is like being a shill. I'm like, what is that? Like, what do we get out of being positive? Like, we're just trying to like something.
Look, if they don't pay us, all right, like, we just love.
If they want to, I'm open.
Oh yeah, paid. Absolutely. By the way, my DMs are open, but like,
exactly. But Matt, before we get out of here, tell the people where they can find you.
Absolutely. Like Nick said, podcasting, it's like therapeutic almost. That's kind of how I feel podcasting, especially talking about this stuff. So just Star Wars is my favorite property. I can't say enough about it. I will talk about this all day. So getting to talk about the Kenobi stuff, the past few weeks with you, Sean, and then the three of us here today. Like Sean said, I'm also admittedly a big Bayside fan, and I'm also a fan of the podcast because the other bands. But more than that, it was just three dudes hanging out. So I appreciated that.
Yes.
And you can find me. Go ahead, Hops Geek News on Twitter, Instagram. Go to hopsnews.beer. That is our website where we have our shows and articles. And as well as I have also just started contributing and writing over at Dork Side of the Force, where I get to just talk Star Wars and write about Star Wars now, which is kind of like my dream gig. So I'm super stoked about that. Go ahead and check all that stuff out. And again, thanks, man.
Yes, Nick. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day, especially when you just got back from tour. And I know you're leaving again in about a week, right?
Yeah. Like 2 weeks.
Like
I'm probably out of here July 4th, spend some time with my family, and then we have shows the 7th through the 11th of July.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very awesome. And if somehow you live under a rock and have not heard of Bayside in the past, long they've been a band at this time. Was it like
22 years?
22 years.
22.
Wow, way longer than I even thought. So yeah, if you haven't listened to Bayside, listen to Bayside. I've listened to them since I was probably half my life at this point. So
actually, that's a good point.
It's a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I was telling someone brought up samplers to me today, and I was like, I found Bayside from a Victory Records sampler attached to Taking Back Sundays Where You Want to Be.
Yeah.
Dude, that's I remember all this. Yes.
For sure. A big point in a lot of our lives, for sure, was finding bands on those samplers.
Yeah, it's such a great thing. It's such a weird thing to think about now, especially with the way things are now.
Yeah.
Because someone just brought up sampler and it just unlocked memories in my mind. I was like, I remember getting introduced into like heavy metal music through the Headbangers Ball compilation when I was like
Headbangers
12.
Ball.
Yeah, I was
Warped Wednesdays were always a big thing. I remember Warped Wednesdays where I found a lot of bands too.
Yes, but again, Nick, thank you so much for joining us and talking to us about Obi-Wan. And until next time, see you later, nerds.